Today's episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling and this is the show that I produce in Sydney, Australia, where I speak to leading guitarists and guitar figures from all around the world. Thank you so much for joining me. Now on today's show, I am joined by Australian musician and author Joe Matera. Joe comes back on the show to talk about his book Backstage Pass, The Grit and the Glamour. And it details many years and many incredible encounters with world-class musicians that Joe has had the privilege to interview for many publications, including Rolling Stone and Guitar World magazine. At the time that I first spoke to Joe, I said, hey, when you finish this book, come back on the show. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Now, the book is amazing. There'll be links in the show notes for how you can access it through Amazon. It's available electronically and in hard copy. And I can't recommend it highly enough. I loved reading it. Full of amazing stories of conversations with people like Lemmy, Brian May, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, members of the Eagles of Death Metal, Matchbox 20. The list just keeps going on and on. So I was really excited to have Joe back on the show to talk all about it. Joe Matera, welcome back to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It's been a few years now, but it's great to be back on your show again, Matt.
Great, man. Yeah, we spoke in, it was August 2019, so 2 and a bit years. And one of the things, we spoke about your career as a musician and as a journalist and how you've really juggled both in different degrees. But I remember one thing you said was that, you had a huge stockpile of interviews and obviously some amazing stories. And you're going to start writing a book. And I remember saying, Joe, if you ever write the book, let me know. And I'd love to have you back and talk about it. So today's the day. So I'm pretty stoked.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, that was sort of always in the back of my mind, but I didn't think that I would write it so soon. But the pandemic obviously forced that to happen because, with no gigs and sort of lots of time at home. So I just sat down. I thought, well, now's the time to do it. So, and here I am today, mate. So it's great, 2 years later to actually have the book in your hand and actually, we can talk about it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So the book's called Backstage Pass, The Grit and the Glamour. It's published by Empire Publications, who do heaps of great music stuff. So good to see you working with those guys too. You've been smashing it on the Amazon charts as well, Joe. Tell me about that. That's so good.
Yeah. Well, the other week it was the book on Amazon Australia charts was number 4, which was Paul McCartney was at number 1 and also at number 2. Patti Smith was at number 3. I was at number 4 and Elton John was at number 5. And I just looked and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And obviously the charts do fluctuate. They go up and down in regards to sales. But, to actually reach that height was, pretty amazing. So we come up to Christmas now, so you may, sort of go back up again. So we'll see what happens. But it was just great to sort of see that response.
Excellent. Now, in the name, in the title, you talk about the grit and the glamour, and you go to great pains to spell out probably not what every author does or rock journalist does, but really, the real life behind the glamour of touring and being a household name. Why was that important to you?
Well, I wanted to, all the books I've read over the years. I mean, they all tend to sort of talk about the sex, drugs, rock and roll. Great, and other great stories. But they sort of emphasise more about the public side of the artist. The glamorous side. And there is another side to that people don't see. And being a musician myself, and living in that world too by touring, I wanted to show people what it's really like on the other side, and sort of bring the artist down to more of the human side of it. And yes, so that's why the book's called The Grit and the Glamour. The work in order to achieve that glamour. So hopefully with my stories, lots of great stories I share there, and also gives people an insight of what it's like. That a lot of times it's almost like 22 hours of traveling and doing interviews and working hard for that, possibly an hour and a half on stage, which is what you live for. So people would say, you're crazy to spend so much time just for that moment on stage, but that's what you live for, the fans. And but it's a hard life, and it's a very lonely life, but there is a lot of great benefits to it. But hopefully the book's captured that human element to the artist that they love.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned, of course, that you're a musician, so you've got a unique take on this. So how did that help you as you're talking to musicians, just to draw out more of that insight, having your own musical background?
I think that interviewing artists who know you're a musician too, and they sort of understand, you can sort of put yourself in their shoes, so you sort of understand their mindset. So in that way, it's like sitting down at the pub, I suppose, your best friend, and just share stories. So they tend to open up without you even saying much, because they know, this guy, he's not here just to get a headline, or just to try and get us to say something. He's here to actually about finding what we're like and what our music's about. So it's just really good like that. I think that helped me a lot with my journalism. And I think that gives me the edge over, someone who's just a journalist themselves and just, talks to an artist. So I think that's something that I'm sort of, privileged to have. But it's definitely worked in my favour in regards to, I've got a lot of great artists who sort of shared a lot of stuff with me that they haven't shared with anybody else, really.
Yeah, cool. In when we spoke in August 2019, you told the story about a very young John Mayer on his first Australian tour, and from the very first time you saw him play, you knew there was something very special going on, and built a relationship with him as well, which we shared in that interview. I should just a quick plug for the August 2019 interview with Joe. I'll leave the links in the show notes. If you haven't heard that, check that out, because we get a lot of background on Joe himself, which is really cool, including that John Mayer story. You also spoke to Nickelback just before they went bonkers massive. Did you have the same kind of sense with them? Did you think, okay, these guys are on the cusp of something?
Yeah. Look, I explain it pretty in depth in the book, but basically when they came out, they had just released that single, "How You Remind Me." So they came out and they played the Mercury Lounge in Melbourne as a showcase, and the record company Roadrunner Records, and I got access to them for 2 days, basically. They were hardly known. People just started to sort of hear the name. So, I hung around with, Chad and the guys, and got to sort of, chat with them and find out more about them. And the next day they did a live at the chapel, and I got to see that. And I knew there's something about them. I mean, when I saw them live that night, I thought, geez, these guys are going to be massive. They just sounded magnificent. And then a few months later, they just hit it, And then I tell the whole story of how for the next couple of years, every time they came out to Australia, I got to sort of interview them again and meet up. And I could see the changes, mate. I mean, from the first time, they had like about 2 or 3 people with them. The second time, they had a bit of a small entourage. And then the third time, they had quite a big entourage, So, and they were like superstars then. I mean, Chad was like absolutely everywhere. So, it's a really fascinating story. And that Nickelback story was what really gave me my biggest break, because basically I actually was writing for a music street press at the time in Melbourne, and I went to the editor and I said, you need to put these guys on the cover. They're going to be massive. And he just said, nah, they're not going to be massive. They're going to be gone by tomorrow, I reckon. And I said, you're going to be sorry, because these guys will be massive. And anyway, they were. And about a year later, the editor said to me, look, I'm going to admit something. I said, I regret not listening to you to put them on the cover. And I said, well, you lost the opportunity in that sense. So, but yeah, that was, it's a great memory to have, 20 years ago now, really.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, at that stage, you were already writing for Rolling Stone and I think Guitar World back then even, which are huge publications in themselves. What's the process to get access to these massive names? So the names we've already mentioned, people like Slash, Gary Moore, Lemmy.
Okay, so first of all, you have to build your reputation up before you get that. I mean, I obviously, before Nickelback, I did a lot of sort of small band sort of stuff, but the opportunity with Nickelback was what really sort of put me out there, and then the word got out, and then I started getting all these other interviews. John Mayer is a classic example. Like John Mayer was really unknown when he came out to Australia, so I was the guy they called to sort of interview him, and we connected on the level where we talked about guitars. He loved talking about guitars with me, and so to be there at the time when they're becoming big, they always call you back. So when he came back, he says, "Oh, where's Joe Matera? I want to have an interview." So you get that reputation. So from that, it just led to other things. So publishers start to hear about you, and they say, "Well, we've got an interview with so and so. Would you like to do it?" And that's what all happened for me, Matt. Sir George Martin was another one. My name was put out there, and there was about 100 journalists who had their names on the list, and George Martin literally went through every single one of them and handpicked, I think it was about 20, in the end, and I was on that list. And when I was told that, I thought, wow, got me nervous, because I'm thinking, crikey, this guy's picked me out, and I better come up with some great questions. So I spent a lot of time researching the stuff, but just word got out there, and my reputation, people knew about it. So that's why I got access to these names, and you build a trust, and the trust is something that is very important as a journalist. You're not going to go and, for example, Slash tells you something, last thing you want is to go to the press and say, "Oh, this is a headline," because it doesn't work that way, and I don't work that way. So it was always purely about the music and the artist. So, when they came out, they go, "Oh, yeah, let's talk to Joe again." So it was great to be in that position.
Very cool. Tell me about meeting Lemmy.
Oh, Lemmy, great old Lemmy. Oh, mate, that's just absolutely fantastic. One of my memorable moments. Truly a gentleman, a person who respected women, he was funny, very intelligent. We spoke a lot about, World War II sort of history. He knew history so well. Absolutely great guy, mate. When I met him backstage at, Vodafone Arena, he invited me in, gave me a Jack Daniels, which is his drink of choice, and spent about an hour with him. It was absolutely fantastic, mate. So truly a rock star in every word, and truly a gentleman, mate. I definitely one person we miss so much, and I think the world is how can I say, less rich without Lemmy, because he was truly a giant of the rock music.
Speaking of other musicians who've passed, Gary Moore, tell me about meeting him. That's amazing. All these names are amazing, Joe, but here's another one.
I never got to meet Gary. That was actually a phone interview, but it was a fantastic interview. We spoke about guitars, we spoke about his career in the 80s, because I love that period of Gary Moore in the 80s when he was really sort of rock out metal, and then he went into the blues, which is absolutely he's one of those sort of artists who had, how can I say, 3 different careers. He was the career with Thin Lizzy. Yeah. He had his career where he had his solo career in the 80s, and then he had his 90s career in the blues, and he became the master of the blues. So a fascinating guy. And I remember, it's a long time ago now, but I remember he was sort of impressed with some of the magazines I was writing for, and I thought, wow, he said, because he read those magazines, and that's one thing I found, Matt, with a lot of these artists is they're fans of the magazines too, like they like as ourselves. We read guitar mags and music magazines, and then to actually be part of the magazine, you go, wow, it's a bit of a buzz. So it's really interesting to know that the artists themselves.
Sure. You've I guess that's the thing. Gary Moore, in fact, the cover of, is it the After Hours, or maybe it's the Still Got the Blues album? I can't remember which one, but the front cover, he's sitting there with an album, and I think on the back cover it's a likeness of him as a kid sitting on his bed playing the Les Paul, and it's really, that's right. It's really just saying, I'm this same kid who grew up listening to this stuff and loving it, and now I'm an artist performing it. But it's a real kickback to that idea of a kid learning the guitar is now a household name, sure, but just someone who loves to play, and obviously to get the chance to talk about the guitar playing in depth, which maybe some of these stars wouldn't have had. in other
Yeah.
interviews. Obviously meant a lot to them. Just the passion for the instrument,
Absolutely.
back to that very core element.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that album is still got the blues, where he's sort of looking back as he started out in the blues. He was playing. So, yeah, it is. I mean, your heroes, mate. I mean, it's amazing because I mean, you like, for example, say, Lemmy, for example, you meet Lemmy, but Lemmy's got his heroes too. He had, it's sort of this pecking order where, you become, then there's guitar players that, for example, like my stuff, and they say I'm their hero. And I go, well, I'm just another guitar player. And then they grow up and people, you get influenced by them. So it's just amazing how that continues. But, in the end, it just shows exactly like I said, say in the book, that we're all humans. We just got this talent that we share, and some people at a different level to others, but at the base core, they are just great human beings who just want to share music and be creative with that music, and connect with other humans. Really, that's what all we want to do with our music, is connect.
Yeah. Now, back to the title, The Grit and the Glamour. Can you give us an example of both sides of the coin? So what was one of the most glamorous places you found yourself for an interview?
Oh, okay. That's a good one. Most glamorous place. Well, for touring, most glamorous places are toured all over Europe. So for me, but artists, look, I remember going in a limousine with the Screaming Jets at in Perth. I was flown over to Perth to cover the Aussie concert tribute to Bon Scott, which had Rose Tattoo, Noise Works, Screaming Jets, and I was staying in the same hotel as Screaming Jets, and we got picked up with limousine and went through, drove to the showgrounds. I think it was about a 10 or 15-minute drive. And that was like, whoa, it's like living a rock star life there. That was sort of glamorous there, I suppose. I suppose, what else? Being, watching a recording session at Sing Sing Studios in Melbourne, that's, there's so many, it's really hard, mate, because, there's so many sort of glamorous side, but at the same time, that glamorous side is also still work to do, but, look, I suppose that's one of my great memories anyway.
Yeah, cool. How about the gritty side of it then? What about some places where you found yourself thinking, this is very real right now?
Okay, well, I can tell you that from my own tours. I mean, sleeping on the floor. I mean, I was when I toured Europe in 2014, I did 16 shows in 21 days in 7 countries. Okay. So basically my whole time was just traveling from the gig to gig, getting, so it was pretty full on. And for 1 week, my agent was in Berlin. I slept on his floor, and then basically just, everything. That was my home base, really. And then, going to Poland and arriving in Poland, and nobody spoke English at the gig. Basically, I had to have my record label guy from Austria was with me. He understood a little bit of that, so I had to sort of draw pictures and tell people what I wanted. I want a mic. This is what the mic, and they go, aha, right, we get the mic for you. So. I mean, that's pretty gritty. That's at the, really, and also carrying my luggage and my guitars all across Europe. I mean, I came home from that tour 5 kilograms lighter. That shows you. I mean, so at that level. So imagine the level you are when you're at someone like, say, Guns N' Roses, where obviously got an entourage, and but still to do like, say, a year and a half of a world tour. I mean, that's incredible, mate. I mean, it's a lot of hard work, So yeah, that's pretty much the grit of everything, really.
This episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott, ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and the McNally Smith College of Music. I was one of the beta testers for the course and can say, as a music educator, I was really impressed by the logical sequence of learning. The course has also been endorsed by players such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch. For more details, check out the links in our show notes. Hey, when have you met an artist that has surprised you or surpassed your expectation, or I don't know, ended up different to the person you thought you were
Okay, without giving much away, surprised me in not a good way, I can say would be, how can I say, Chris Bailey from the Saints, but I won't get into it too much because it's in the book.
Yes.
All I can say is a very disappointment, and I know a lot of people who've worked with Chris as well as producers, and they've all told me the same thing as what I experienced, which is pretty sad because, I think the Saints are a great Australian band, legendary band, and I think Chris does some great music, but he's sort of one of that. He's in that sort of, how can I say, when they say, don't, be careful what you wish for and meet your heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's one of them. It's just like, well, I met him. I don't want to meet him again.
Okay. Because I asked you a similar question, not about the book, obviously, back in 2019. What's it like meeting your heroes? And I've met a bunch of mine, I guess, through the podcast. You were overwhelmingly positive about that experience, though. You said, you're meeting people who are doing what they love and trying to share, like you said before, trying to share that music. And obviously, an interview is part of that process. So you're part of that process of something that's really positive, but obviously a lot of hard work. So, interesting to know. When you told me that a couple of years ago, with your breadth of experience, that it's been, overwhelmingly positive meeting these people.
Yeah, it has.
That's cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, don't get me wrong on like Chris Bailey. It's just I mean, I explain in the book too that artists do have bad days, all right, and he probably had a bad day, and I say that in the book. So I'm not going to be judgmental in that fact because that happens. I mean, it happens to all of us. You might have a really shitty day, and someone comes up to you, and at that moment, you might just say something that's out of order, and that fan goes away. But I think that's important as an artist, that you never forget that your fans are the ones that put you there in the first place. And I think that you got to be aware of that and always have that respect. So like I said, it's just one of those sort of bad days. I think it was more he probably was late to the gig or whatever. But look, I mean, that's a very rare occasion that was,
Sure.
I mean, all my interviews and meetings were very positive. So I've been lucky in that sense because I've got friends who have, in the same sort of line of work, and they've met some people who they regret they ever met. They say, oh, look, please, that was a horrible experience. So I've been lucky in that sense.
Do you think with the uber scrutiny we have nowadays through social media and the 24-hour news cycle, have you seen artists behaving differently in terms of how they want to present themselves, knowing that there's just...
Yeah, I do. I think nowadays, Matt, it's all about image and branding. It's no longer about the music. I don't care what people say. It's not long about the music. It's a business. Obviously, it's always been a business. There's nothing wrong with being a business, but I think too much is emphasis on the image and backstory. Really, I mean, I've read stories in magazines by and their backstory is really interesting. But there's some backstories you go, this is made up by publicists, and
Right.
publicists tend to do that, in order to get a story, which is, and I know because I get pitched stories all the time, and I'll research it. And I've had some in the past where I've researched it and I found that the story was completely made up, and I refuse to do a story because it's like, well, that's not fair. There's artists out there who are really genuinely need, editorial space, and in today's world, that's very hard to get, So I rather give it to people who really deserve it and need to be heard, But yeah, I think it's just gone too much, mate. I think, it's just moved away from the heart of what music's all about, really. So I mean, I'm not much into the younger sort of music that's coming through because I'm much more now settled into stuff that I grew up with and the artists I've spoken to and guitar players.
Sure.
But from my vantage point, I just look at it and I go, well, it's sad because it's going down that, and that's sort of lack substance. I think it's like here today, gone tomorrow. You want music that's going to be here in 5 years, 10 years, timeless. One of my favorite bands of modern times is Foo Fighters. I think Dave Grohl is a genius, and I think that music is going to be timeless regardless. So they're the sort of bands I love who are really, and Dave's just a great guy. genuine. He don't, his backstory. We all know his backstory of Nirvana, but he doesn't need to have a backstory because he's oozing with so much interest in, like, he's recording stuff. And his meetings with artists too. So he's a really fascinating guy. I find him really interesting, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And another author, like his recent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
really
it's amazing because musicians now have become authors too. I think the pandemic has brought out a lot of musicians out of the woodwork and written books. Like Dave's written a book, Paul McCartney's written a book, lyrics books, same thing. But a lot of people started doing their autobiographies, and it's great, mate. I think it's it's just another avenue, and you sort of finally find out more about from the artists themselves what their story is about, rather than reading it like third hand from someone else.
Yeah, cool. So you mentioned the pandemic was a motivator for you to, number one, write the book, but also get back a little bit more into journalism. So we've mentioned Guitar World, who you've been doing a lot of work for, which is awesome. So good to see. So proud to see an Aussie crushing it on a worldwide publication like that. Yeah. And, me, like everyone else, grew up reading Guitar Player and Guitar World. They were the two big imported magazines here.
Yeah, Guitar World. I mean, I started reading that in 1981. The sixth issue. I still got it.
Wow.
And who would have known? That's almost 40 years ago now. And who would have known that decades later I'll be writing for them? It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I learned a lot of my guitar stuff, as I said in the last podcast, from reading guitar mags like Guitar World, Guitar Player. I love Guitar Player. I love it more the old school Guitar Player. I think the Guitar Player today is sort of it's become sort of a short story sort of type stuff. It's still a cool magazine, don't get me wrong, absolutely great. But I think Guitar World is absolutely the father of it all. I think that's one of the best mags on the market. But yeah, it's like anything. It's like, you read it when you're growing up, and then when you're older, you happen to be in there and you go, wow, that's great.
I bet. What's who are some of the artists you've covered in your Guitar World work recently?
Well, I was back in 2002, I think it was. I remember now. I was the first journo to write about the making of Metallica's Saint Anger album. I was speaking to Bob Rock in the studio, so I had a sort of an insight into what was happening at that time before the album was sort of completed. So I did a news story for Guitar World that was published in that. I've done for Guitar World. I've done Hank Marvin. I've done I've done a lot. I've done over the years, guys from Kiss. There's so many artists I've done. I just can't remember, man. I mean, over the years, but now I'm doing a lot of feature stories for the mag, which is really cool. So I did one feature story on Thomas Skogsberg, my producer in Sweden, who's the death metal producer of Swedish bands like Entombed and that sort of stuff. So I did a whole history of Swedish death metal. So that was really cool. So, and history of instrumental music. I've got Joe Satriani to join in on that one, and Hank Marvin, and a bunch of other guitar players. So it's just great to sort of, and I love doing historical pieces. I think it's, for guitar players, especially the ones that are coming through, great to read the history of where guitar playing has evolved and where it's come to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I loved reading those articles for sure. And Joe, what else have you been up to? Like you're a guy, you've got a lot of irons in the fire. You're always working on something, even if you can't gig.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. This will surprise you, mate. Even though I'm a guitar player, I've actually just completed, and it's coming out next year. I've signed to a German label for this, but I did an instrumental electronica trip hop album.
Wow.
Basically using pianos and synths and strings and some acoustic guitar and beats, and it's come together really nicely. Just something different. I want to do something different, so that's coming out. I've also got a rock album, my typical rock stuff, but very much Swedish based. So basically, my music in the last couple of years has evolved where it's become much more Swedish sounding, in the sense that everything is recorded in Stockholm, apart from my guitars and my vocals here in Australia. But I work with Thomas in Stockholm, and I've got all the Swedish musicians backing me. And my market is basically Scandinavian Europe now. So So it's very much sort of a lot of hard rock. And I had Don Powell from Slade play on my latest track,
awesome,
called Inside Looking Out. So it was great to have Don, such a great drummer, mate. I mean, when he sent me the drum tracks for my song, I stuck them into my recording system, and the volumes just went berserk because I was so loud and heavy. So but it was such an honour to have him. And I've had Jan Schaffer from ABBA, who played on all ABBA hits. He joined me on guitar on my single I brought out earlier this year, called Take a Look. And now I've got I'm in the middle of co-writing and recording a track with legendary UK pop stars, the Corgis, who in Australia had a big hit in 1980 called Everybody's Gonna Learn Sometime. So we're in the middle of doing that. That'll be released next year.
That's awesome.
So I've got a lot of stuff happening, mate. I mean, I'm doing some stuff with I've just done a co-write with Russell Morris. So that's all coming out. So yeah, I'm keeping busy.
Great to hear. And I'm not surprised at all, having known you for a little while now, Joe, that you are keeping it going.
I love keeping busy. Yeah.
Nice. So, hey, the book is Backstage Pass, The Grit and the Glamour. People should be buying it for Christmas immediately on Amazon. I'll stick all the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Anything else you want us to know about the book or anything else you got going on?
No, just I think hopefully people enjoy the book. I know already that people who've read it have given me great positive response, which is great to hear. And look, there is enough material. I'll tell you now to do another 2 more books. Yeah. So depending on how it all goes, and time wise, I may do definitely a second book because I've got so many stories here. And but I just want people to enjoy it, and the book's pretty much it's a feel good experience, about meeting your heroes, and hopefully people get something from it too, from guitar, especially guitar players, because a lot of it's guitar players too. And look, and I just want to say thank you, Matt, and to everybody out there who supported me over the years, and hopefully I can get out there when next year when we can do shows again, and people can come and catch up, and bring your book along and I'll sign it for you.
Nice. That's a good deal, Joe. That's awesome. Well, Joe, mate, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I'm a big fan of your writing, as I said last time round, and the fact that you're now a published author as well as a legendary journalist is super cool. So well done, mate.
Oh, you're too kind, mate. Too kind. Legendary. I think legendary should be people who are really legendary. I don't think I'm legendary, mate. But I appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much.
All right, there you go, Joe Matera on the Guitar Speak podcast. And please, let me clarify, Joe is a legend, okay? All right. Hey, the book is amazing. I loved it, and it's well worth checking out. There's so many great guitar stories in there, which I know you're going to love. So check out the links in the show notes. My great thanks to Fretboard Biology, to Joe Elliott, Todd, and all the team over there. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. Please check out the Fretboard Biology links as well. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the Guitar Speak podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you pod. It's free, and the episodes will get delivered to your device every time we upload one. All right, I'm going to get out of here. My name's Matt Wakeling. Thank you so much for tuning in. And in the words of legendary rocker Michael Schenker,
keep rocking, keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking, indeed. I'll catch you next time. Bye now.